Good Thursday morning and welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft in the studios of 89.3 Lakes FM and Civic Center TV. I'm joined as always by Ronnie Dahl in her home studio.
Tyler, we made it to Thursday. Can you believe it? Every week I'm like, where does the time go?
Yeah, it's crazy how fast this week has gone by. I mean, just it seemed like we were just getting the Monday yesterday. And here we are, it's Thursday morning, we're almost to the weekend, and things are still happening every single day. Life is moving really quickly right now, not just day by day, but just our news cycle as well, locally, statewide, certainly at the national level also.
And speaking of that, so we had that little bit of snowfall at the beginning of the week.
Yes.
Kind of got everyone, I think, into the holiday spirit, looking forward because you have snow, it's pretty. But I think the bigger thing for the month of December, people are so ready to have 2020 over with. We're done with it. Let's just move on to 2021. And it's not that COVID's going away once we strike midnight and we enter into 2021. But I think the bigger thing is going to be about the ability to 2021 is going to be a year of hope, especially with the news of the vaccines moving forward.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way as we get closer and closer to the vaccine. Very soon, probably before the end of this year, starting to be distributed to those really high risk and key areas of our communities throughout the U.S. And then next year, as it progressively moves throughout the U.S. population, the world population, and hopefully spells a swift end to this pandemic.
We're also over COVID-19, but COVID-19 is not done with us. It continues to impact pretty much every portion of our public sector and our day-to-day lives as well. And with that, Tyler, let's go ahead and jump into the day's headlines. If you head over to civiccentertv.com, click on the coronavirus tab at the top. That's where we post the daily headlines. And of course, bad news yesterday coming out of the courts for the Michigan restaurants. They have lost their latest court battle. So the dining rooms must remain closed until at least December 9th, as a federal judge has denied a motion that would have nullified the state's COVID-19 order that temporarily prohibits in-person dining. Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association and two restaurant groups sued the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services shortly after the 3-week ban began mid-November. The MRLA claimed restaurants are being treated unfairly since other types of industries can remain open. However, the judge disagreed, saying there's a notable reason why restaurants should be treated differently due to restaurant patrons cannot wear a mask while eating or drinking. And while the ruling is a blow to the plaintiffs, the case isn't finished yet. The judge determined Michigan's order likely doesn't violate federal law. However, he declined to rule on if the order infringes on the Michigan Constitution. So I think what we're going to see is this start to move over into the state courts as well. But I think one of the interesting things coming out of the judge's ruling has to do with that phrase, Tyler, of there's notable reasons why restaurants should be treated differently because they cannot wear a mask while eating or drinking. Well, what about movie theaters? You can keep your mask on. What if movie theaters decide to stop selling concessions, and that would allow for patrons to come back in?
Yeah, it's something to think about. It's something to think about. All these regulations that are in place, they're putting them in place because they have implications on the public health. In the case of the restaurants, people are typically seated and eating for much more than 15 minutes and speaking with each other. They're at a distance, but there is that crossover of that time threshold where COVID-19 can easily be spread between people without them wearing masks. In the case of the movie theaters, they can wear masks, but are people going to actually be wearing masks throughout these film viewings? Because either they're in a dark room and people aren't necessarily looking around clearly at them, or because they're there eating popcorn, drinking drinks, watching a movie for several hours. And while they're still social distanced and they may be, separated by entire rows and by multiple chairs horizontally, that's still at question. So there's a fair argument being made on the health department side, on the government side, but also a fair argument being made on the part of these businesses who are saying, look, we're keeping them at a distance. We are making sure that they are wearing their masks when they're not eating, when they're not drinking, when they're not engaging in something that requires their mask to be off. We're doing what we can do to operate, but still operate safely, and the numbers aren't showing direct correlation or causation in the numbers to our businesses. So fair arguments are being made on both sides. This is definitely going to be something that's going to continue to build up through Michigan's court system, probably all the way to the state Supreme Court, maybe even beyond that, depending on how long these restrictions stay in place.
Yeah, they are set to expire December 9th, but I think everyone anticipates that they are going to be extended. And the reason for that being because the cases are continuing to surge even with the restaurants closed. So I think they're anticipating that this is going to continue until at least the first of the year.
I would agree. I don't think that this goes away a week from yesterday when this pause expires. That pause that was put in place was more of a benchmark of how much progress can we make in these 3 weeks with COVID-19? Are people going to listen to our warnings and not travel to the warnings of health officials nationwide and not travel for Thanksgiving? Are people going to do their part to be able to stop the spread or the further increase in the positive case rate in our state and throughout the country? Is shutting down certain sectors of business going to be a help? And really, so far, the numbers they have from within this pause has been about 1% drop in those in the positivity rates of these COVID-19 cases. And I don't think that's enough to give them confidence that this is starting to resolve itself and these regulations need to go away. And so that's only 1 week in. Short of there being a significant drop in positivity rate between now and next week, I don't imagine this going away. I think it would continue on through the first of the year, like you said.
Yeah, but I do think if you read between the lines, because the judge's argument was you cannot eat or drink with a mask on. So this could open the avenue for movie theaters. Maybe they don't provide concessions, or the ice skating rinks and so many of the other entertainment venues that have also been shuttered during this 3-week pause. So there's a lot of focus on the restaurant industry. However, there are a lot of other businesses impacted by this. And I think there is room for some of these other industries to maybe look at this and see it as a possibility for them to move forward with their argument as well.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll see as this continues to play out in the court system.
Yeah, if it's their only way of continuing forward with somewhat regular operations to say, well, we'll continue to show movies, but we're not going to provide concessions. We're not going to provide popcorn and drinks and candy and whatever people want to eat and drink normally in these theaters, because if we do that, we can't show these movies, which means we're not going to get people coming to our business, which means we're not going to make any money whatsoever. That may be what they have to do. Same thing with these ice skating rinks. If we can get people to come here and spend money at our business, but we have to sacrifice another stream of revenue, even if it is a strong stream of revenue in normal times and abnormal times when we are operational, it's a sacrifice that we're willing to make in order to remain somewhat open. That may be a concession, no pun intended, that they make to the state in order to continue to operate, or that the state says, well, you know what, realistically, if you're not doing A, B, and C, there's lower chance for spread. You just have to enforce a mask rule. And they may say, okay, we'll still fight it, but in the meantime, this allows us to be operational.
Well, this weekend is going to be a little bit different for University of Michigan football fans because the game against Maryland has now been canceled. Michigan's football team will not play this weekend as a surge in COVID-19 cases has forced the program to cancel its game against Maryland program made the announcement Wednesday afternoon saying it has paused all team activities and cannot practice until at the earliest Monday, December 7th, due to positive test and contact tracing requirements. Big Ten Conference protocols during the pandemic released this past September stipulate that a team must stop practicing and game competition for a minimum of 7 days if COVID-19 test positivity rates exceed 5% of the team and 7.5% of the population. Additionally, any player who tests positive must sit out game competition for a minimum of 21 days, potentially jeopardizing Michigan's game next weekend at Ohio State. So that is the big news coming out of Ann Arbor. I think a lot of people aren't surprised that this is now hitting the college football teams as well, although we do know that the coach, Harbaugh, and so many of the parents of the team members, they pushed to play way back in the fall. Yes. But now, U of M is not having a good season at all, though, Tyler.
No, they are not. And so, I'll start off by taking my shot. On the
Go ahead. In all fairness,
okay,
Tyler is a Sparty fan.
Yes. Full disclosure, I am a Michigan State alum. So this, while the COVID-19 element of it brings me no joy, the joke that I can make does. On the bright side, you can't lose this weekend if you're a Michigan fan. So you have fun with that. You had a lot of that this year. So you can't lose, and you don't have to worry about who's going to be your quarterback and how many interceptions that person is going to throw or how many passes they will throw simply to the other team or nobody in existence. So that's on the positive end. But we have seen COVID-19 affect other teams in the state of Michigan. Of course, Michigan State had our game against Maryland canceled due to COVID-19. Ohio State's had a couple of their games already. You talk about the Michigan and Ohio State football game in a couple of weeks. They've had a couple of their games already canceled due to COVID-19 issues. And if they lose that Michigan game, of course they won't lose in the points because they're playing against Michigan, and Michigan doesn't score points against Ohio State. If they lose the ability to play that game due to COVID-19, Ohio State has a lot to lose because they could potentially at that point, if they lose one more of their games to COVID-19, they won't be eligible, having played 6 games minimum, to play in the Big Ten championship game, which could have implications for whether or not they make it into the college football playoff. So, once again, Ohio State, not just because they can play a game of how many points can we possibly score in one game, but because it has championship implications, really wants to play Michigan in 2020.
So many implications. Although, it's been pretty much noted and said to the coach of U of M, you need to start winning against Ohio State. So this could actually be his out for the year if next week's or if the Ohio State-Michigan game is canceled due to COVID.
Well, yeah, it's not losing if you never play.
Exactly. Hey, for those out there that are thinking about traveling for the holidays, this is an issue that came up over Thanksgiving, but now it is continuing as we are in the middle of December as well. Health officials on Wednesday urged Americans to stay home over the upcoming holiday season and consider getting tested for the coronavirus before and after if you do decide to travel. That's the same advice they had over Thanksgiving, but many Americans traveled anyway. COVID-19 cases and deaths continuing to rise, the CDC added the testing option. So the CDC says even if just a few people became infected while traveling over Thanksgiving, that could still result in hundreds of thousands of new infections. So during the news briefing, the CDC said travelers should consider getting COVID-19 tests 1 to 3 days before their trips, and again, 3 to 5 days afterward. They also recommended reducing non-essential activities for a full week after travel or for 10 days if you did not get tested afterward. CDC, Tyler, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I think last week, the CDC is now shifting their recommendation for quarantining from 14 days down to 7 to 10 days, hoping that more people will comply. But we are already seeing, if Thanksgiving is any indication, that people are not complying with these rules and regulations and recommendations because I think COVID fatigue is very real.
It certainly is, and I think it's also just an American culture thing. Americans tend to do what they want to do and do so because they have the freedom to make those choices in normal times. And when it comes to a situation where you have to make some difficult decisions for the betterment of everybody, that tends to be a sticking point for a lot of people. So even despite knowing that your traveling can be a risk, or that mass traveling during the holidays this particular year can be a major risk, I think that Americans just tend to be more likely to make that decision anyway because it's their life. They can do what they choose. They have the freedom to do that. Whether it is right or wrong is up for debate. Whether or not they have the right to do it, it's not, because unless those rights are taken away, which they won't be, people are going to make those decisions, smart or not smart.
Well, and added to this is they're saying get tested before and after. Yeah. But we are already seeing the whole process of getting tested. There's a backlog. These workers are at the labs are overwhelmed with the number of tests that they're having to process. So there's a delay as well. But then this could add to that backlog as well. So stay home, enjoy your family, have fun with the people that you love close to your home. That's the latest headlines on civiccentertv.com. Again, just click on the coronavirus tab, and that's where you'll find the daily headlines. Along with that, we also, at the top of the page, you will see links, direct links to some of the resources, including the CDC, as well as the state of Michigan, Oakland County, and our local communities as well. You can just go to civiccentertv.com, click on those links, and get direct access to make it a little bit quicker for you. Always great to have you tuning in here to the Civic Center TV. Tyler and I are going to take a quick break, but we do have a lot to talk about in the Thursday edition of the Oakland County Megacast. On today's show, we will be speaking to the Jewish Family Services of Metro Detroit. One thing have you been thinking about as you are getting older? What is the impact of aging having on our brains? We talk so much about the health of our bodies, but what about our brains? So we'll be speaking again with Lynn Breuer. She is the Director of Community Outreach and Wellness at the Jewish Family Services of Metro Detroit. Representative Brenda Carter for the 29th District. She will be with us today on the Oakland County Megacast, and then we'll also be speaking with Craig Bryson for the Road Commission. Winter is upon us here in Michigan. What does that mean for the Road Commission? Because we're also in the middle of a pandemic. How are they going to be handling that? And in the 11 o'clock hour, the Sylvan Lake Police Chief will be with us, and we'll also be speaking with the Community Care Services Director, because mental health right now is such a big topic for us to be talking about and addressing. So a lot to get to on the Thursday edition of the Oakland County Megacast when we return in just a few moments.
Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/containcovid. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jonae Khaldun. I'm the Chief Medical Executive for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. The people who are at highest risk of getting severely ill from COVID-19 are the elderly and those with chronic medical conditions. That includes people with heart disease, diabetes, COPD, or those who have compromised immune systems. People who are in those categories should right now be staying at home as much as possible and not going out if it is not essential. If you fit into one of those categories, those are the things you should do. And if you have a family member who fits into one of those categories, you should be checking in on them and making sure they are following those guidelines. There's something everyone can do to protect the community from COVID-19.
Great to have you with us on the Thursday edition of the Oakland County Megacast. As a reminder, you can catch Tyler and myself Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access. If you have cable, tune us in, Channel 15 on Comcast, Channel 99 on AT&T. Also, if you're out driving around in your car, 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM The Biff. We also want to say thank you to the Sylvan Lake Police Department for allowing us to live stream today's edition of the Oakland County Megacast on their Facebook page, and we will be speaking with the Chief of Police of Sylvan Lake in the 11 o'clock hour, but we want to say thank you to them. Kicking off the show today on this Thursday, though, let's talk a little bit about our brain and our brain's health. There's so much focus, especially during this pandemic, about our mental health and our bodies and getting exercise. But one topic a lot of people are not talking about or addressing is the health of our brain, especially as we all age, which is happening to all of us each and every day. So to dig a little or dive a little deeper into this topic, let's go ahead and bring in Lynn Breuer. She's the Director of Community Outreach and Wellness for the Jewish Family Service of Metro Detroit. Thank you so much, Lynn, for being with us on the Oakland County Megacast.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
You know, it's not easy aging. These 20-something-year-olds don't get it, but eventually they will.
I agree. There's one client I used to work with, and I'll never forget his quote. He used to say, "Aging ain't for sissies." And I'm telling you, the older I get, the more I think, oh, he called it right.
Right. And for us that have had loved ones that have suffered from dementia or Alzheimer's, you kind of get that impact of, the importance of our brain health because you're seeing and you're experiencing that decline on a firsthand basis. But when we're in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, a lot of us aren't talking about that. So you're the expert here. What should people be doing at an earlier age? Because we talk about good nutrition and good health and exercising, but no one is really talking about what we should be doing at an early age to help our brain age as well.
Absolutely. And at any age, Ronnie, there are things that people can do. So whether we're 20, 40, 50, 70, it's never too late to try and take care of our brain health. I think the most important place to start is to understand that there's no stigma to notice that things aren't the same as they used to be. People might see small changes in memory, small changes in our visual spatial area, which you might notice is, wow, I don't park quite as well as I used to park. I pulled up a little too close, or I didn't pull up close enough in that space. Or I read, and by the time I'm ready to turn the page, I realize I don't know a thing that I read. I stopped paying attention. This is all normal and nothing to be afraid of. But just like we're not surprised if we might start to need reading classes as we get a little bit older, sometimes in our 40s, it's not surprising to notice these changes and that our brains will respond if we really put our minds to it. The most important thing we can do is to give ourselves new cognitive challenges. So things that we don't typically do. For example, if someone loves crossword puzzles, it's fun to do that for entertainment, but it's not helping our brain health. If we pick up something that we've never done before, we don't know how to do, and our brains really have to fight to figure it out, that helps us take advantage of our body's ability for neuroplasticity, to make new connections in our brains, even as we're getting older.
But do you find that sometimes too, when you're older and you're trying to pick up these new skills or learn new things, people get frustrated because they are not picking it up or learning it as quick as they once did. So they just give up.
Absolutely, it can be frustrating. And that's why the more we talk about the fact that there's benefit only when things are hard versus when things are easy, it helps people to set their expectations, because we really don't like to do things we don't feel good at.
So with that, Lynn Breuer with us here on the Oakland County Megacast. She's the Director of Community Outreach and Wellness for the Jewish Family Services of Metropolitan Detroit. With that, Lynn, what can people be doing, and what age should they be starting this?
So you can start at any age. The bigger you build your cognitive reserve, think of that as a bank account of all the deposits you make in terms of intellectual stimulation, going to a museum, learning a foreign language, playing a musical instrument, taking a new class. Those are all things that help us, which will help us more if we have a little bit of decline later in life. A stronger step that people can take would be engaging in cognitive training classes. And that's something we see people starting as young, perhaps as 50, and going all the way up into the 90s. And that's curriculum. That's something that's evidence-based, that's been studied with people taking screenings before the training and after the training. And you can actually see some improvements in people's cognition, or people who had been on quite a decline, leveling off and slowing down that decline.
So what I will say, I think a lot of parents with this remote learning right now are learning that maybe it's taking them a little bit longer to learn things as well, along with their kids, because, fifth grade math is not what it was when we went to school. They have the new math. And so there are things that people are having a harder time to grasp as they get older. So what tips do you say to those people, especially parents right now, trying to remote train and help their kids with their schoolwork?
Well, I would first of all tell them to take care of themselves, right? The stress and the pressure that we're all under doesn't help our brain health at all. So if they're having a bad day, instead of beating themselves up about it, it's important to be gentle with themselves and to get help where they need it. But it's not just that parent at home that's noticing changes. The social isolation that's coming with the pandemic is causing many people, despite their age, to have so much less socialization than we're used to. And that means sometimes we have less access to our rich vocabularies. It takes us longer to get just the right thought and just the right word. And so people are noticing changes at 20 and 30 and 40 that we wouldn't expect to see until later. So again, to understand that's a little bit of a side effect of the pandemic, and to do all they can to fight back.
And so when I am maybe on the younger scale, 30s and 40s, and I'm noticing this more because of COVID-19 and this crazy world that we're living in right now, what can I do to recognize it, but also to change it? Can you retrain your brain and make it healthy again, just like we do our bodies?
Right. That's a great question. And absolutely, there are things you can do about it. So first of all, preventively, if people eat a diet that's rich in antioxidants and omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, that's helpful. To exercise at least 3 hours a week aerobically, if that's safe for someone to do so, if your doctor approves that, that's very helpful. There's a whole host of preventive measures, including stress management, because chronic stress actually shrinks and impairs the function of our hippocampus, which is one of the memory centers in our brain. So we don't want that to go on unaddressed. But the single best step that people can take is to really engage in a form of cognitive training. And again, someone in their 20s, I think perhaps it's too early for that. But 40s on, it's a little bit of a time commitment for a few months to yourself to really fight back against some of the changes we're experiencing due to the pandemic and normal aging combined.
Why do you think we're not talking about this more as a society?
I think because there's such a stigma about it. There used to be such a stigma talking about mental health issues, and perhaps there still are stigma attached in some circles. But for many people, they don't want to say, I'm having trouble with my memory. I'm having a hard time finding my words. We go to a worst case scenario in our head. We're afraid we have dementia or an Alzheimer's disease, or that our employers or our friends might view us as somehow less capable than we were before. And that's why I'm so glad to be here today, to be able to share the news that this is normal. It happens to anyone who's lucky enough to live a long life. And we're seeing it a little bit more accelerated during the pandemic. So if we can take that stigma away, that would be great.
So Lynn, how do you know when you're starting to notice these things, how do you know when it's time to address it and get help, or just take notice of it?
So that's a great question. And it depends on the type of help you're talking about. One of the things people struggle with is, how do they know if the changes they're experiencing are normal, signs of an aging brain, which still you can address, you can still fight back against it, or when do they need to get help from a doctor, from a neurologist? So that answer really depends on if the changes people are noticing are significant enough to interfere with their ability to function. So if my issues with language or my issues with my memory stop me from being able to function at work, stop me from being able to function in a volunteer capacity or socially, that's no longer considered normal, and that's something to reach out to a physician about. Anything else, it's nuisance, it's concerning, you don't have to accept it. There's a whole host of steps people can take, and I think you have our contact information. People can reach out to us for more specifics, but as long as people's functioning on a daily basis is unimpacted, it's not worrisome and needing acute medical attention.
And with that, though, so for a lot of people, they don't want to recognize it in themselves, but maybe family members are starting to notice things. When should family members, how do they even approach the subject? Because it can be a testy subject, right? An uncomfortable topic for people to discuss. So when should a family member actually jump in and try to get a loved one help?
It's a great question. And it's so individual. It depends on the personality of the person who's having difficulty, right? If there's someone who's really proactive and has always lived a proactive life, I think people can be a straight shooter and talk to that person early on and say, hey, I'm noticing some changes maybe to your memory. Is it just me, or have you noticed some things? Maybe I'm just being worrisome, right? But if it's someone who you think isn't as proactive and is likely to be concerned about hearing that, it's a little bit easier to talk about yourself first and say, I'm noticing these last few months, my memory's not what it used to be. Are you having any of that as well? It's a nice way to open the door. And the timing of that really depends on when someone is concerned enough to think it's time to talk about it, right? There is a phase when we can just watch it and see if there's any changes, because maybe someone's having a bad day, a bad week even. But if something is going on and there's a consistent pattern, consistent trend, it's best to address it, because there are steps that can be taken, whether the changes are normal or due to a dementia. And the earlier people can start using interventions, the better off it will be ultimately.
Yeah, we hear that with so many other health conditions as well. Early intervention is the best help for you and your body. And with that, Lynn, quickly before we let you go, can you share with us, how can people reach out and get help as well?
Absolutely. So for information about cognitive training, they can call our telephone number, which is 248-788-MIND, MIND, or they can also send an email to MINDU, so MINDU, at jfsdetroit.org. If people need more supportive help to talk with a geriatric social worker or for mental health counseling, we have that as well. And they can call our resource center at 248-592-2313. We'll be happy to help.
I think the big thing in all of this is it's okay to reach out and ask for help and at least do some research and start the process.
Absolutely.
The one thing COVID-19 and this crisis has taught us is that life is not normal as we used to know it. And it's okay, more so now than ever, to reach out, talk to people, and address some of these issues that you're having. So, Lynn, thank you so much for being with us and taking time out of your day to talk about this important topic here on the Oakland County Megacast.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's so important for us, and it's okay to talk about these issues, especially it could be a touchy subject for so many people in our family, but it's okay to talk about it and to get the help as well. We're going to take a quick break here on the Oakland County Megacast, and when we come back, we will be bringing in and speaking with Brenda Carter, the representative for District 29. This is the Oakland County Megacast.
Hi, my name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Park's COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
As rivals, we don't always see eye to eye.
Like who scored the best recruits?
Who's gonna be who?
And whether we wear green
Or blue. But one thing we can all agree on to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Wear a mask.
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 The ball's in your court, Michigan.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in my home studio, while Mr. Tyler Keefe, he is our superhero here at Civic Center TV. He is holding things down back at the studio there in West Bloomfield. Just as a reminder, you can always catch us on civiccentertv.com, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, Channel 15 if you have Comcast. Go ahead, channel surf, find us. Channel 99 on AT&T. We also want to say thank you to the Sylvan Lake Police Department for allowing us to live stream today's edition of the Oakland County Megacast on their Facebook page. Thank you to the team over there in Sylvan Lake. With that, let's go ahead and bring in Representative Brenda Carter. She is with Michigan State Representative for District 29. We had you on before, right after the election. We made it through the election.
Yes.
But I think one of the big problems so many people are facing, COVID-19 is not going away.
No.
We're still in the midst of this crisis. And while a vaccine is on the horizon and it's bringing great hope to our communities, the economic fallout is still happening.
Absolutely.
And if we could talk a little bit about some of the things going on in the state of Michigan, because on the federal level, they're still trying to deal with coming up with some type of financial support for our businesses as well as the individuals directly impacted. Here in the state of Michigan, for the people, the business owners, the restaurants, the employees that don't have that safety net of the unemployment with the federal, additional federal money that we saw during the first pandemic or the first shutdown. What do you want them to know? If they're trying to pay their light bill and their rent, but the place that they work down is shut down, what do you want them to know as their elected leader?
First of all, I want them to know that we are very aware of what's going on economically, especially in District 29. Many of the business owners in my district I'm familiar with, I'm friends with. I live day to day with what they're going through. One in particular is a business in Pontiac called Duckett's, who has contributed so much to the community. But at this time, because of the edict that's in Lansing from MDHHS, which is really focusing on how bad this pandemic has gotten, and it's a between a rock and a hard place, and we're doing everything we can. We're looking at it on the appropriation side, but a lot is contingent on what's happening, like you mentioned, in Washington. Hopefully we can get another stimulus package out there to help our businesses. We realize that our businesses are the economic drivers of our local communities, and without them, many of our communities as a whole will fail. So I just want our small businesses to know that we understand what they're going through. This is a situation that is out of our control, and we're doing everything we can to mitigate some of these punitive circumstances they're having.
It's one thing for you to understand, and a lot of them will say that they empathize with you as well as being their elected leader, and you understand, but that's still not going to keep their business afloat, or it's still not going to get their rent paid. For those that think that our elected leaders on the state level as well as on the federal level aren't doing enough, what do you say to them?
I say to them that we are going to do everything we can, okay? And I know that's hard to really understand where we are, okay, as legislators, state legislators. But I am sure that Governor Whitmer is understanding the pressure that's that our local businesses are under, and that we are doing everything we can while trying to keep our communities as a whole safe. That's the big thing. We're looking at these metrics and we're seeing rises all over the state, not only in our urban areas, but in our rural areas. And we have to gauge these things and realize that if we don't do something about the spread of COVID-19, it can only make our economic situations worse. So we are meeting, we are doing everything we can. We're looking at all the metrics. We're talking to our congressional legislators and saying, hey, can we get some things out here to help our communities, knowing that they know and we know that the crisis that we're in right now. But what I say to them is we're doing everything we can.
Hope is on the horizon. We are hearing that we could start to see a vaccine here across the country, including here in the state of Michigan, before the end of December, which will be great news. What discussions are you having with other elected leaders about the process to try to roll out the vaccine? Because there are so many logistics involved in the vaccine.
Well, first of all, we're in alignment with the process that's coming out of Washington, whereas we're looking at our frontline people first. Okay, our medical field, our police, anybody that's on the front line that's dealing with COVID-19. And right behind that, we're looking at our nursing facilities where there's a large outbreak, as well as our prisons. Okay, we're looking at the area that's being impacted adversely by the disease. But there is a process in place. I've been in meetings where they have looked at the hierarchy of who would get the vaccine first. And also, we're looking at maybe beginning to administer this vaccine as early as the end of next week, which would be great. So yeah, we are aggressively looking at this right now, but we are looking at our frontline people first. We're looking at our seniors in the nursing home, our seniors who have comorbidities, a lot of things, and we're addressing those areas first. But what I want everyone to know is that we are taking a very aggressive, not assertive, but aggressive look at administering these vaccines.
Well, and I know there are a lot of logistics involved in trying to administer the vaccine, especially because of the storage issue. It
Yes.
has to be kept in very cold temperatures, but also it's a two-step process.
Yes.
So when you're looking at that, are you worried and do you wonder about how this is going to happen within some of the inner city communities? And how long are we going to look at trying to get this vaccine to our urban areas, and not only the first step, but the second shot as well?
Okay, as far as our urban areas are and our rural areas, I must stress that this is no longer a specific to our urban areas. It's all over the state. We're looking at once again, dealing with our frontliners first, okay? But as far as the storage issues, I'm glad that Pfizer has a vaccine and Moderna has a vaccine. One is sub-zero temperatures. The other ones you can refrigerate right there on your facilities. So I think the bigger issue is not the storage issue, Roddy. I think the biggest issue is convincing our communities that this vaccine is safe in the first place, because it's not going to do any good to have vaccines if nobody wants to take them.
That is a great point. And so are there any discussions in Lansing about a public service announcement to get this out and to try to convince people to get the vaccine?
Well, I haven't been privy to that conversation, but I'm sure it is, because I think we realize all over the world right now that we have a vaccine that we haven't had the long-term test on. It's a lot of it's in the emergency use right now to try to mitigate the spread of COVID. But I am sure, and this is something I can check on, because that is a good point. Are we getting something out there like when COVID first appeared? We had all kind of placards and all kind of mailings and everything out there to get the community informed about this disease and what we need to do to keep it under control. So I'm sure right now, and I will check with MDHHS to see whether or not we have some information that we can share with our communities. You mentioned our urban areas. I'm concerned with the information. I've heard feedback from some of my communities about their hesitance with this vaccine, but also in our rural areas where it's spreading like wildfire, we got to make sure that everybody understands that as of right now, the tests have shown that this vaccine is safe. And we are once again weighing against the fact that, we have a vaccine, a pandemic that's out of control.
Yeah, Representative Brenda Carter with us here on the Oakland County Megacast. She is with Michigan's 29th District, which covers our area here in Pontiac and the greater West Bloomfield area as well. And with that, I wonder, we're going into the holidays. There was a warning and a recommendation, don't travel, do not get together in groups, have a small holiday Thanksgiving. Obviously, people did, well, if any indication by the number of people that actually went to the airports and traveled over the Thanksgiving holiday is any indication, people were not paying attention. As an elected leader, it's obvious that COVID-19 pandemic fatigue has set in. What do you want your constituents to know about this virus as we head into the winter months and the numbers are worse than what they were in the spring?
Well, I would like my constituents to know that this is a serious and deadly disease. Right now, we're sacrificing a lot. This is the time of year. It's a time of year where we reach out to our families for warmth and comfort, and we do our philanthropic things like we love distributing turkeys and gifts to kids, but we have to do that safely. I think Governor Gretchen Whitmer said it best. We're going to sacrifice this this closeness with our family next year so we can be with our families, this year, so we can be with our families next year. And until we see some relief on this pandemic, I would encourage everyone in my listening voice right now, in your listening area, to just be safe. Practice social distancing, wear your mask at all times, and then, just wash your hands, just be safe. And then if you're fortunate enough, like I am, to be with my spouse, you make that the most special Christmas in the world. Because when you're an elected official, you really don't have a lot of time to spend quality time with your loved ones. This gives us an opportunity to spend that quality time in close proximity with somebody we have to get to know again.
I think there are a lot of couples, by the way, that are doing just that because it has become a little too close for comfort for some people as well. But knowing that, can we talk a little bit about the schools? What do you see is going to be the future of the schools and the education system for the people within your district?
Well, I think this pandemic has taught us a lot. I saw education moving more towards the technological standpoint in the future, but not so much with what I'm seeing right now, where a lot of schools are forced to go online because of what's happening in our schools. So I hope this will give us, especially in Lansing, an opportunity to put more money into our schools to update their technology, update their Chromes, update everything that they're doing in the event, on the unlikely event that something like an emergency like this happens again. You know, I see it benefiting our school systems by allowing us to upgrade our schools and prepare for it in the unlikely event something like this happens again. So I see it changing our schools altogether. I do.
With that, it's a lame duck session. Going into these last few days and last few weeks here in the month of December, can you talk a little bit about the process and what's going on with elected leaders such as yourself in Lansing about some of the bills and some of the issues that you're trying to get addressed? And we're in the middle of a pandemic on top of that.
Well, I would like to, first of all, encourage my colleagues to stay safe, okay? Unfortunately, we have not gotten to the point where we can vote remotely. So that means we have to be in the chambers, and this is not only in Lansing, but it's in Washington as well, where so many of our colleagues are contracting COVID-19. We've been very fortunate, or I could say unfortunate for us, because we did lose a representative to COVID-19, Representative Isaac Robinson. But since then, 11 other colleagues have contracted the disease. So we are very aware of what needs to be taken care of as far as servicing our constituents with issues that they care about. And one of the things I'd like to say about the 100th legislature of the House of Representatives is that all in all, we have been really working collaboratively on a lot of issues. Of course, there's been some things where we had to vote on partisan views, but the majority of what I've seen, and I'm speaking for me myself, I do come from a very diverse district, has been a lot of collaboration, okay? And that is rewarding for not only us legislators, but for our constituents as well.
You definitely have a very diverse district and trying to weigh those voices. But then also you had mentioned sometimes voting, partisan lines. What has this been like in this year been like? I feel like this is the time to put the partisan politics aside and come together for our country and for the state of Michigan and for the residents. Are you seeing that spirit? Do you think it's going to happen, or this is just politics?
Well, I will say it like this, and this is without any front-hand knowledge, because in order for you to make a positive assessment about what's going on in Washington, you actually have to be there with the day-to-day. And I'm not sure what's happening up there, okay, down there, wherever DC's at. Okay, but in Lansing, I am strongly encouraged with what I see. Yes, we have had some issues where we had to vote along partisan lines. We had to. But there are a lot of things that I'm seeing where we are voting together as a team. This is why I'm saying that the 100th legislature, as far as I'm concerned, somebody else may see it differently, has been very collaborative. The two and a half laws that I have passed. I have one right now where I'm working with 3 Republicans, an insurance bill on actuaries that has passed. Has been along bipartisan lines. The work that I'm doing in the Poverty and Homelessness Caucus is bipartisan, bicameral. So this is showing that collaboration that I hope transcends up to or down to Washington, D.C., and our national Congress people can kind of get a little bit of what's coming out of Michigan. I'm not saying it's a bed of roses, okay? I'm just saying that I am impressed with what I've seen with the teamwork between the two sides.
But with that, can we talk a little bit about the unemployment system here in the state of Michigan? Can we just fix it already?
Well, and I can speak on that because my team, Jonathan and Tori, has worked very hard. We're right now around 1,000 cases that we help the UIA system solve. in District 29, and this is every community has come to us from Orchard Lake Village all the way to Auburn Hills. Every single person has been affected by unemployment. But once again, with a quarter of your workforce out of work in Michigan, and that's what it was estimated, a quarter of the workforce was seeking unemployment. It just completely overwhelmed an antiquated system. So once again, we have an opportunity, a huge opportunity to update the system. You know, this is a once in a century pandemic. We didn't really, if we saw it coming, we didn't adequately prepare for it. Now we have an opportunity to prepare for it. And I would like to say, from what my understanding, I think we're down about 150 UIA claims now, and most of those are the ones that require second and third steps with the unemployment system. We have done a fantastic job of servicing District 29 and making sure they get their unemployment benefits. I cannot speak about what's going to happen in Washington with if they're going to pass another HEROES package. I do not know. But as of right now, we're doing everything we can, and we do have a swift system in place to deal with people needing assistance with unemployment.
Representative Brenda Carter with us here on the Oakland County Megacast. She represents Michigan's 29th district. Before we let you go, any other things going on in your district that we maybe didn't touch on that you want our listeners and our viewers to know?
Well, I really would like to express this. I have so many times about how I feel about my district as a whole, as being as diverse as it is. We recently had a town hall with all the police chiefs from Auburn Hills, Kego, Sylvan, Orchard Lake. Well, Kego, I love Kego, okay? But we had Orchard Lake Village, Auburn Hills, Pontiac, or Oakland County Sheriff's Department, and Sylvan Lake. And, you know, it was just great to see these leaders in our policing field to come together and share their views about what's important to them as chiefs of police of their community, what's important to them about their community, and to just see that cross references between the communities, which was awesome. We did this once before when we brought the superintendent from West Bloomfield, Pontiac, and Avondale in a meeting to share commonalities for our district. And what we're finding out is that we're more alike than we are different. And that was heartwarming. And I will say this to Sylvan Lake and anybody out there that's from Sylvan Lake, you probably are the cutest little city in Michigan, okay? Okay, so yeah, that's all I would like to say, that, you know, we're strong, we're collaborative, we are working together, we're sharing things together, and that's what's making District 29 exceptional.
Well, and if I can just kind of take that conversation a little bit further, because I do think one of the good things we do, we have some police chiefs here in Orchard Lake, Sylvan Lake, and Kego Harbor. They all came from the Southfield Police Department at one point in time in their careers. And for the first time, we are seeing a great collaboration amongst the chiefs for working together, which is a great thing. But I know one of the last times we spoke, there was a huge divide from the police to the public. Mm-hmm. That has kind of died down a little bit, but I would imagine that this conversation will continue once we get into the new presidential election or administration. But with that, what did you take away from that conversation that you didn't know before?
How close the police chiefs were. Okay, and how many things they shared together. And this was a community conversation. It wasn't just the police chiefs. We invited the community. We wanted to hear if there were issues still with, you know, how the community felt about the police. We wanted the community to know that the police are engaged with things like the PAL League. I forgot to mention on this call, we had County Commissioner Angela Powell. Next time we'll have Commissioner Jinjo and Nelson on the next call, because we're going to do it in 3 months. And we also had a representative from the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. So we could talk all the way around the board. The goal was to have the community sensitized to the roles of what our policing organizations are doing, as well as have our policing organizations sensitized to the feelings of the community. And what I got out of this was more so our community was inquisitive about, okay, so this is what you do, and this is what happens when a question was asked like, well, if we're if we're stopped by the police, how should we handle that interaction? How can we de-escalate the situation so it doesn't end up something that makes the front page news? And it was just beautiful how these questions were answered, and they were answered by each representative of each community, and they were both all collaborating on the same method of dealing with it. So I thought it was just fantastic to deal with not only having the police involved from different communities, but having representatives or constituents from different communities able to cross-reference Orchard Lake Village or come across to Auburn Hills or talk to the Oakland County Sheriff's Department and get a better understanding of how our police organizations can service our communities.
That is a great conversation to have with the public as well, because you see two sides of the issue. And one of the things, our law enforcement departments across the region and across the state, they're all having a hard time with recruiting right now, but even more importantly, recruiting a diverse group to join their forces. And I think that is going to be the key to help move some of these departments forward and to continue these conversations behind the badge as well. So it's great that you were able to be a part of that.
Well, one of the things I would like to commend Deputy Gil Guerin on is he brought up exactly that point. In fact, each department had an opportunity to answer where they are in their recruitment and training needs. And that was brought out to the community that if you want to be in law enforcement, this is what you need to do in your specific community. So that was also brought out in the town hall, as well as it was asked if it was a wish list. And this was the one where I was kind of like, okay, they're going to get me. What is the wish list? If you had a magic wand and your state representative can represent your needs in Lansing, what would it be? And it was pretty much unanimous across the board. We need more funding for training, more funding for mental health sensitivity training, a whole bunch of things. And this was coming pretty much across the board. And some startling numbers I found out is how much, I think it was like $17, $18 per person per training per year. And that's something we can do something about. And I actually jumped on that and started looking into it.
That is so great. You're listening to 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. Representative Brenda Carter, we appreciate your time here with us on the Oakland County Megacast.
Oh, well, thank you, Ronnie. Thank you so much for inviting me. I truly appreciate this opportunity to communicate with the constituents in District 29.
Well, we appreciate your service to our communities as well. We're going to take a quick break here on the Oakland County Megacast, and when we come back, we will be speaking about our roads here in Oakland County.
Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards, back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart. Keep wearing a mask in public. And if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus.
Hi, I'm Dr. Faust, the Medical Director for the Oakland County Health Division. The most important thing you can do to prevent the spread of illness is to wash your hands thoroughly and often. Follow these 6 easy steps every time you wash your hands. Step 1. Turn on the sink and wet your hands with warm water. Step 2. Apply soap to your hands and lather between your fingers, under your nails, and the front and back of your hands and wrists. Step 3. Wash your hands by scrubbing them together for at least 20 seconds. Step 4. Rinse your hands with warm, clean water. And Step 5. Dry your hands with a clean cloth towel, a paper towel, or hot air blow dryer. If you're using a cloth towel, make sure to change it often. For handheld faucets, turn off the water using a paper towel instead of your bare hand. Step 6. If you're using a paper towel, throw it away. Practice healthy habits like washing your hands after coughing or sneezing into them to keep you and others healthy. Go to oakgov.com/health or call Nurse on Call at 1-800-848-5533 to learn more.
Great to have you with us in the second hour of the Oakland County Megacast. We all get it. In the summer months, we hate the orange barrels and those big road closure signs from the Road Commission here in Oakland County. No one likes them, but in the wintertime, we like those big orange trucks because that means our streets and our highways are being plowed and salted, which can be so important for getting out and getting around in the winter months. Joining us today on the Oakland County Megacast to talk about the work being done to improve our roads and make them safer is Craig Bryson. He is the senior communications manager for the Road Commission of Oakland County. Craig, always great to talk to you.
Good morning, Ronnie. Nice to talk to you.
So we kind of had a taste of winter at the start of the week. How did that go?
It went pretty well. In the big scheme of things, it was a pretty small thing, but of course we were still out around the clock for, I think we were out about 36 hours on that one. So it was, it took a little work, but it wasn't bad. Weather cooperated. The traffic, for better or for worse right now, the traffic is a little bit less than it pre-COVID days. So that does help as well.
Knowing that too as well, Craig, does that play into your plan? The lower traffic volumes because of COVID, does that play into your day-to-day plans when you're rolling out the salt and the plow trucks?
No, because we still have to assume there's going to be traffic out there, so our plans don't change. It makes it easier to accomplish our goals, but it doesn't change our plans, really.
With that, how many team members and how is the pandemic? Because this is really the first big winter season that we're going into since COVID-19 and this pandemic. What is the plan for you and your team, and how has it changed because of the pandemic, or has it at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've got about the same number of staff we usually have. We've got about 180 people who are available to drive snowplow trucks when needed. What's really different is that, typically a driver will work, in a storm, they can work for 16 hours. They go into the garage, jump out of their trucks, and go take a break. And somebody else will jump into the trucks. Now, between that transition period, we've got to completely scrub down the trucks, make sure they're completely clean. The drivers are, of course, wearing masks while they're in the garages or they're any place where they're with other people. So that's the biggest change, is just trying to keep our drivers safe and away from anybody who may be infected.
And with that, because of your drivers and your staffing, if one person goes out and then you have to quarantine so many people, what could the impact be on your team? Because I'm sure you guys are talking about that.
Absolutely. We've been putting in place some plans, contingency plans. It could be horrific if somebody God forbid, somebody gets infected and they infect other people at our garage, or somehow it spreads through one of our garages. So the first step would be if one of our garages becomes impacted and any significant number of drivers has to be quarantined, then we have 6 garages around the county. The other garages will help out that garage. If it's larger than that and it spreads to more than one of our garages and it impacts more of the county wide, we're talking to surrounding counties about sort of mutual aid agreements. And we've got great relationships with all of the county road agencies surrounding us, and they're all, sort of in the same boat. So we're working with them to make sure we've got all those agreements in place. That gets a little bit tricky from a legal point of view because we have to make sure everybody's reimbursed for the expenditures and all of that. But it is entirely possible that we could send our trucks into Genesee County or Macomb County or vice versa. If something happened here, they could send their trucks in to help us out here. So it's a serious issue.
Yeah, and I would imagine it's not so much like it's that quarantine period where if someone was exposed, well, you have to be quarantined. And I know the CDC is now reducing that number from 7 to 10 days instead of a full 14 days. But for a small staff or for a vital staff in the middle of a snowstorm, that is, it's got to be something that keeps you and the leadership team over there at the Road Commission up at night.
Oh, it does. I mean, even if it's only a week that people are quarantined, we have had cases where we've had snowstorms back to back to back, for multiple weeks at a time that keep us running around the clock. And, it's not only the number of people that are out on the road at any given moment. We have to schedule on a 24-hour rolling basis when we're in that kind of snow fighting operation. So we may have 106 people out on the road at one time, but we have to be able to have those 106 people available for 24 hours a day for multiple days in a row. So that's where it really gets to be potentially problematic and challenging.
So, Craig, go ahead. You can admit to us, are you doing like a little dance every day to say, no snow winter, no snow winter?
Absolutely. We would love that. For multiple reasons, not the least of which is COVID. But of course, the less winter maintenance activities we do, the more money we save. We in a normal winter, excluding all of the COVID factors, we spend about $12 million on winter road maintenance, and that's work that we have nothing to show for at the end of the winter. There's no road improvements. There's no new equipment. There's just $12 million gone out the door just to keep the roads cleared during the winter. So anytime we can reduce that, that's a cost savings to us, and that is money we can use in other places in our budget.
Well, I've been trying to talk to Mother Nature. I'm like, okay, can we just have snow on December 24th, 25th, maybe through New Year's, and then you can do away with it?
We'd be good with that. If you can get a word in for us too, we'd appreciate that.
So you mentioned the budget. How is your budget? Because the budget is kind of set previously, so it's not so much this year's budget, but I would bet you're kind of looking at those numbers going forward.
Absolutely, and we were concerned coming into this year. It looks like everything is going to be okay, but the challenge is that our second largest source of funding is the state gas tax. And, early on in the COVID period, starting in March, a whole lot of people were working from home, which means they're not driving, which means they're not buying gas and generating gas tax revenue. So those revenues took a big dive in the early part of the year. They're getting back to normal now. They're not at normal, but they're certainly better than they were. So those revenues have increased. We're a little bit less concerned. At the same time, this is the final year, 2021, of the state's 2015 road funding package. So that last increment of funding kicked in this year, which gave us a little boost of funding as well. And that's kind of making up for the lost revenue from the gas tax due to COVID. So budget-wise, we're okay. We'll see over the next couple of years how that really plays out. And if the vaccine's coming and we can get everybody vaccinated early 2021 and kind of get back to normal, that would be, of course, the best case scenario, of course, health-wise, but also for financially for us. So, that's where we are at the moment.
With that, though, with less people traveling and driving each and every day, is that less wear and tear on the roads as well, though? Especially this, to me, seems to be the big pothole season, right? This time where we freeze, we thaw, we freeze, we thaw. So with fewer people on the roads, will that help with the wear and tear on our roads, and then therefore the work that you and your team have to do?
Theoretically, it should. We really haven't seen a dramatic reduction in that yet. And part of the problem is the places where we have potholes are typically the roads that are already in poor condition, and any amount of traffic is going to, tear up those sections of roads. So the incremental decrease in traffic is not really dramatically reducing that. It certainly helps when our crews are out patching the potholes to have less traffic come speeding around them. We appreciate that, but we have not seen a reduction in the number of potholes, unfortunately.
Oh, you just know how to put a big old thing of coal in our stockings before Christmas.
We're good at bringing reality to town.
So I noticed that we had some road closure signs recently, Maple and West Bloomfield Hills. What is that construction? How many days are we going to be living with this?
Right. So right now, Maple is closed between Inkster and Franklin, right in Bloomfield Township, right on the West Bloomfield border. That is closed so that DTE Energy can relocate their electrical lines within that section in anticipation of us completely resurfacing the road next year in spring, summer of 21. So it's closed right now through December 18th is what DTE is telling us. That also during that time, we're going to be removing some trees there in anticipation of the project. It'll then close again in the spring in hopefully April if weather permits, and be closed through about September or October, again, if weather permits, so that we can totally resurface that road. We're going to tear out a culvert that's in there and replace it. It's a pretty big project. It's about a $4.1 million project, but during that time next year, it will be closed to through traffic as well.
Craig Bryson with us on the Oakland County Megacast. He is with the Oakland County Road Commission. With that, going into the winter months, what can we anticipate as drivers here in the state of Michigan? Are we going to notice anything different?
Not really. I mean, I think from a winter maintenance point of view, it's shaping up to be every year is different as far as the amount of snow and the amount of precipitation, the temperatures we get, but generally speaking, it should be a relatively normal year. I'm sure we'll have some bad storms, but we're not anticipating anything really out of the normal this year.
With that, Craig, talk a little bit about how you and your team, you schedule some of these road closures, and what months can you do things, and at what point in time do you pretty much shut off road construction because of the winter months and then just focus on if your team needs to address any winter storms?
Yeah, that's a great question. Generally, the construction season is April to November. Occasionally, we'll have a project that'll push into December. This Maple closure is a little different. It's not really road construction. It's just DTE Energy doing some excavation. And that type of thing they can do year-round. We try to get that also condensed during the regular construction season, but sometimes they can do it. We need to have it done before the construction season starts so that they can do the project in this case. But right now, pretty much all of our actual road construction projects have wrapped up for the season. And that's beneficial for a couple of reasons. Number one, it gets them out of the way so we can do winter maintenance, but also it's sort of dictated by the temperature. You can't put down concrete when it's below freezing. You can't, asphalt doesn't work well when it's below freezing. So those are dictated by temperature and materials, but also helps out with the winter maintenance.
See, there are so many of those factors that the general public just doesn't get behind the scenes of what you and your team do every day.
Oh, you wouldn't believe all the little details that we have to consider. I mean, there are environmental things. We cannot do certain projects during certain months in the spring because it's bat breeding season, and there are endangered bat species that live in the trees along our roads, and we're not allowed to touch those trees. So if we have to remove some trees, that we have to do it during non-bat breeding season. There are fish in, and things like mussels in some of our rivers and waterways. So if we're doing a bridge or a culvert project, we can't touch the water during certain months during fish breeding season or mussel breeding season. So there's all these factors that most people have no idea, but they have a real impact on our schedules, and they are often a challenge.
I'm thinking about those. I'm like, are you kidding me? It really is. No one ever thinks about those things, right?
Well, believe it or not, there was one project on, I believe it was Cass Lake Road in Kego Harbor a number of years ago where there was an endangered species of mussels in the water underneath the bridge. We had to literally go in, pick up those mussels, move them to a new home, relocate them before we could even touch the bridge. I mean, it's, they don't teach that in construction engineering classes.
Absolutely not. I will say I remember that project, and it was the biggest hassle because the bridge was closed.
It was. And that's a big challenge in Oakland County because we have so many lakes that, the roads go around the lake. So if one road is closed, it's not like some places in the metro area where there's a grid pattern, there's another road half mile away. You have to go all the way around the lake to make it to your destination. Yeah, that's a problem.
Craig Bryson joining us on the Oakland County Megacast, the Senior Communications Manager at the Road Commission. for Oakland County. And Craig, we've talked about it already a little bit, that with COVID-19, the traffic numbers on a daily basis are down. They're expected to be down similarly in the winter months of 2020 due to COVID-19 as this crisis continues on. Even with that being the case, what should drivers be aware of as they're out on the roads during the snowy season, the stormy season, as road crews are out maintaining the roads and keeping them in safe conditions? What should people be doing to keep the roads safe for those workers, but also for each other, even with reduced traffic?
That is a great question. I thank you for asking it. We say this all the time, that we will do everything we can to try to make the roads as free of ice and snow as we can, but there will be times when there will be snow and ice on the roads. And it is always incumbent upon drivers to drive appropriately for the conditions. We hear people saying, I couldn't drive 70 miles an hour on the freeway this morning. You guys aren't doing your job. Well, we're doing everything we can. But if there's snow coming down 1 inch an hour, as there sometimes is in the winter here, the roads are going to be snow covered, and you got to slow down. Don't tailgate, slow down, give all of the other vehicles room, and particularly, please don't crowd the plow. Don't tailgate a big snow plow. Don't try to pass them and cut them off. Those are big trucks that take a lot of space to slow down and to turn. And when vehicles hit them, unfortunately, it often does little damage to our trucks, but it can total out a car real quick hitting one of those big steel trucks.
Such important information. Craig Bryson with us here on the Oakland County Megacast. Craig, anything we didn't ask that you want to touch on before we let you go?
Well, a couple of things that I think sometimes people don't really fully understand, and we try to share is, one of the big challenges for us is, when do we call in our trucks? When there's forecasted snow coming, everybody's saying, well, that's simple. The forecast said a storm is coming. But when is that storm coming? When we have what we call full run coverage, which is 106 snowplows out, it costs us between $24,000 and $28,000 an hour to run those crews. And if the forecast is the snow is going to start in 3 hours, we don't want to bring those drivers in 3 hours early and waste $75,000 of taxpayer dollars just sitting around waiting for the snow to start. So we want to try to make those decisions as accurately as we can. And it's always a little bit of a challenge, but we watch the forecast. We have our own road-related forecasting services. We have our own Doppler radar service. We listen to our friends at the television and radio media forecasting and try to use all that information to try to make the best call we can and bring those trucks in. But it's sometimes, there are storms that come up out of nowhere that nobody forecasted. We talked to the meteorologists at the local television stations, and while they sometimes don't like to admit it, there are storms that they didn't know were coming, and it catches all of us by surprise, and that's never fun, but sometimes that happens as well. So we just like the people to know that we're watching these things and making the best educated decisions and guesses that we can with the information we have, and a lot of times we'll get it right, occasionally we won't, but we do the best we can with the information available.
That is good information to leave on, because I will say, Craig, I don't know if you know this, but I actually used to do weather in Lansing. And I'm really happy that there are no tapes left of those days, because I was terrible. But weather is not an exact science, and it's an educated guess. And when you're weighing that also against your entire team and the tax dollars involved, you're trying to make that best decision. So thank you, though, for you and your team and everything you all do each and every day to keep us safe here in Oakland County.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
We're going to take a quick break here on the Oakland County Megacast, and when we come back, we are going to bring in the Chief of Police for Sylvan Lake. This is the Oakland County Megacast.
Michigan, the coronavirus pandemic has put us all to the test, and now it's time to put COVID-19 to the test. As we move forward, testing will be critical. We encourage anyone who has reason to get tested to do so, those with symptoms and those without. If you are leaving home and going back to work, get tested. If you think you may have COVID-19 or you've been exposed recently through family, friends, or coworkers, get tested. Our test locator tool can help you find the right testing site that fits your needs. Even if you're looking for easy access with no cost, no prescription, and no appointment necessary, we've got you covered. Help Michigan move forward, not backward. To find a testing site or learn more, visit michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards, back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart. Keep wearing a mask in public. And if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus.
Thank you, as always, for tuning into the Thursday edition of the Oakland County Megacast. We always appreciate it. If you don't have the opportunity to tune us in to the TV, because you can catch us on Channel 15 if you have Comcast, Channel 99 on AT&T. We also want to let you know you can catch Tyler and I Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, but also on the radio, 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM The Biff. We also want to give a big shout out. The Sylvan Lake Police Department today is allowing us to live stream today's edition of the Oakland County Megacast on their Facebook page. So we want to say thank you to them, but also say thank you to the chief. He's joining us now on the Oakland County Megacast. Brian Bassett, Chief of Police for Sylvan Lake. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Ronnie. I appreciate it.
So we were speaking earlier in the show with State Rep Brenda Carter, and she was talking a little bit about a town hall meeting that they had with all the area chiefs of police and people from the community. Do you want to put your 2 cents on that? How was that town hall?
So it was great to be invited by the representative, and I appreciated the opportunity. And I know that I actually was watching earlier, and I know she talked about the fact that we had Orchard Lake joined us, Auburn Hills, Oakland County sheriffs who are doing the law enforcement in the city of Pontiac. But then also the community was able to come on and ask questions. And I think sometimes when you look at some of the conversations that we're having across the country, it looks like there's this larger divide between the law enforcement community and the folks that they're serving. I would argue that sometimes there has definitely been some lack of communication and a breakdown of that communication, but I think we're a lot closer than people think. There's a lot of great work that's been done in law enforcement over the years, and I think it's great when we have an opportunity to talk directly to the community about some of those issues.
Because I think with social media, some of these narratives can be pushed to a degree without the validity that they actually need behind the stories that's being told. And so to be able to have these opportunities to speak directly to our elected leaders and to the people of the community has to be a good thing, because one incident can spiral out of control like that.
Yeah, and really to that same point, we have an incident wherever, and I'm not speaking about any particular incident, but whether it is in Minneapolis or whether it's in Texas, and you have all of a sudden people believing that is happening here or that is happening in their police department. And that's why it's so important for us and in law enforcement community to get a chance to actually speak to our community directly and say, this is what we are doing here in Sylvan Lake. This is what we are doing in Keego Harbor or Orchard Lake or Pontiac. And that's why, those kind of things and those tragedies we've seen, they're not going to happen here. We are doing the training, we have the expertise, and we have the right people, working for your community, that we're not going to have some of those issues. But again, that's why we have to be out there and have those conversations.
Yeah, it's about community relations. I think even more so when we are in these small communities. And with that, Chief, you're fairly new to this position. How's it going?
It's going great. Sylvan Lake is, as we say, we're the prettiest little town in Michigan, and it is true. It's just a great community. It's very supportive. It's a community that I've seen just in the short time that I've been privileged to be here. A number of times people will step up and help their neighbors, whether that's the neighbor, down the street, or it's the neighbor, 5 miles away at a neighboring community. I've seen them step up, and it's just a great community to be a part of, and it's been great.
So I will let you know, because it's after the event now. So we were a little worried on Thanksgiving Day. Sylvan Lake had a small turkey trot, and because the turkey trot wasn't taking place in downtown Detroit, my friends and I, we put on our turkey outfits and we did the run through Sylvan Lake and knocked on doors of people we didn't even know and wished them a happy Thanksgiving. And we were kind of like at some point going, do you think they're going to call the police? I was like, that's okay.
Well, I know exactly the event you're talking about, and I think everybody, was careful. We were outside. It was a great event, and for a lot of people, including my own family, the turkey trot is a tradition, right? You do that every year. You go and you use it, at least in my own mind, I use it to justify my excessive eating later in the day, right? And so I've burned off at least a couple hundred calories, so it justifies my 5,000 calorie meal later. But it was, it's one of those little things because of the pandemic that has been tough, right? A lot of people weren't able to do that one tradition with family and friends. So I'm glad that, people did the kind of informally, socially distanced 5K through, or actually it was 5K and 10K through the streets of Sylvan Lake.
We kind of walked it, but I will say, typically in Detroit, we wear turkey outfits and you fit right in. Like we're underdressed if we're just in a turkey outfit. Sylvan Lake, first time doing it, we kind of felt like we stood out, but I will say we had such a great response for so many of the people and the residents there in Sylvan Lake that we're like, we're done with Detroit. We're doing Sylvan Lake every year.
So I'll tell you this, because of this, and my kids said, well, Dad, how, because they've run it with me in past years. And they said, well, Dad, we're not going to see the banana guy. We need to see the banana guy, because there's always, every year, there's the guy who runs in the banana. And I mean, there's a list of costumes, but that's for whatever reason, that's the one that stuck with them. But because of that, we actually so I did the same thing with my own family. I did a 5K with them. I set up a course and we actually ran the 5K, and I even got medals for them. So that at the end of the 5K, we put medals on the kids. It's not the same as the great parade and the turkey trot downtown, but we tried to keep, some sense of normalcy and tradition at our house too.
Yeah, I broke out all my past medals and handed them out to the people who participated with me, because how many medals do you need? You have 100, but did you dress up as a banana?
No, it's worse than that. Somebody, a friend, well, he's a former friend now after what he did. He bought me, it's a Halloween costume of a police officer, except it's a police officer dress. So it was quite a costume, but it entertained my kids, and I guess that was the point of it, right? So I ran in full costume. This
year, Thanksgiving and the holidays, it's so different than years past, but it is about trying to find new ways to celebrate and make people smile and make people laugh, which it definitely did. But can we talk a little bit about what your police department and your officers are doing for the community right now? You have a toy drive going on.
We do, yeah. Thanks for letting me kind of talk about that for a minute. So we partnered with Orchard Family Services, which, again, just a little bit about them. They've been around now for, and don't quote me on, I believe it's over 70 years, or over 60 years, over 60 years. And they serve children in foster care and within different states, from either transitioning back and forth between family, whatever the case is. But they serve the surrounding 15 communities. So they have a huge group of young people that they work with, and I've had an opportunity to work with them in the past, and so I partnered with, and from Sylvan Lake, we had our Parks and Rec department, as well as our council and the police department, all partnered in this effort to try and, again, kind of like we were talking about a minute ago, try and bring some normalcy to, those young people as they're, working and struggling and trying to figure out their way in life.
And so with that, going forward, did you already distribute them, or are you still in the process of collecting toys? And if so, how can the community help?
So we are still in the process. We'll be collecting toys through December 11th. So we don't have a lot of time left, but there is information on the Sylvan Lake City webpage, as well as the Facebook page for the police department, that has an actual list that Orchard Family Services requested, some of the items that they're specifically looking for. But all you need to do is, at any point that works for you, please drop it off either at City Hall or the police station here, right here on 1820 Inverness. We'll take the items. They don't have to be wrapped, and we will actually get them to Orchard Family Services once we're, have everything collected.
I like that they give you a very specific list, because when I've done these things in the past, you go out and you buy and you're like, you don't know the person getting it, and you don't know if it will mean anything to them. So it's great that they actually give you a list. But on the backside of that, it means a lot to the kids. But what does it mean to you and members of your department to take part in this?
So we actually, and again, I want to, our department, but also with our other, Parks and Rec and our elected officials, we talked about it. And through this whole pandemic, I have to, and I'll just speak personally, I've been very blessed, right? I still have a job. I haven't been financially, hurt that way. And that's not true for so many people now. So it's really a blessing for me, the opportunity to try and give back in some small way. So, as they always say, and I know it's kind of a cliche, but really, I'm getting more from this than I'm giving. So I feel very grateful to get to be a part of it and get to be in the position to, go out and do this.
It really does help your heart as an individual to be able to do something for other people. Even for the people that are limited in their means. I've seen homeless people help other homeless people. And it's an amazing thing to see, and what it does for our hearts. And knowing that, so at Sylvan Lake, you guys have a few restaurants, not really any bars or anything yet, but with the latest shutdown, I do know there are a lot of people in your community, waiters and waitresses, and I know you have the boat club, people like that. With this latest order from the health department to shut down indoor dining, any word, or have you had any issues there in Sylvan Lake with this?
So we haven't had any issues, and let me speak from the police department side as far as law enforcement issues. That being said, to your point, I mean, just as every other restaurant is going through this, we have a lot of struggling, folks who have invested so much of their time and resource and energy, and they are struggling, and there's no question about that. Whether in here in our city, we have Ellen's and the Grill and all of these great restaurants, and they're struggling. I mean, their model is just not designed for people just to grab a quick carryout. It's more of an experience. So it's been very tough on a lot of our businesses.
The Grill has become one of our go-to places, by the way. Like, their meatloaf is fantastic, better than anything I could actually make.
I guess I don't know one way or another. That's true enough, but I will say the Grill's meatloaf is excellent. So there's our plug for the Grill.
Yeah, right. With that, Chief, before we let you go, anything that we didn't touch on from the law enforcement standpoint as we're going through this new COVID surge that you want to talk about or address at all?
No, and I guess there's. I almost feel like we've all probably talked about it until we're exhausted. I'm happy if there's any specific challenges people are having within our community. Please feel free to call me directly. But I also just want to touch back on our gift drive The other thing too, I know some people have done Amazon and they just had it shipped directly here. They're on the list as gift cards and I know we're all busy, but also if you just want to donate, my kids and I have already volunteered. We'll go out and actually do the shopping and purchase it. So I'm hoping when we designed it that there's a way for everybody, if they do want to give, to give. And again, any questions, feel free to call me directly as well, or send me an email or a text, or however you want to communicate with me.
That's awesome. And the beautiful thing about being in the small community like Sylvan Lake, they really get involved and take care of one another. So that's a good thing, especially going into this holiday season.
For sure. Well,
Sylvan Lake is lucky to have you, and as a fellow Kegel neighbor, we're lucky to have you as well. So we want to say thank you to you and your entire team for all that you do for our communities, because we do know that there is a joint effort to protect all of our communities. Even though there's a border, you guys reach across the line to help all of us. So we want to say thank you.
No, thank you. And thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
It's great. Chief of Police for Sylvan Lake, Brian Bassett, thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break here on the Oakland County Megacast, and just about 20 minutes left in the show. And we are going to round out the show with the Deputy Director for Community Care Services. And during this pandemic and this time, so many people right now suffering from stress and mental health issues. How can you get help? We'll be talking about that when the Oakland County Megacast continues.
Hi, I'm Dr. Faust, the Medical Director for the Oakland County Health Division. The most important thing you can do to prevent the spread of illness is to wash your hands thoroughly and often. Follow these 6 easy steps every time you wash your hands. Step 1, turn on the sink and wet your hands with warm water. Step 2, apply soap to your hands and lather between your fingers, under your nails, and the front and back of your hands and wrists. Step 3, wash your hands by scrubbing them together for at least 20 seconds. Step 4, rinse your hands with warm, clean water. And Step 5, dry your hands with a clean cloth towel, a paper towel, or hot air blow dryer. If you're using a cloth towel, make sure to change it often. For handheld faucets, turn off the water using a paper towel instead of your bare hand. Step 6, if you're using a paper towel, throw it away. Practice healthy habits like washing your hands after coughing or sneezing into them to keep you and others healthy. Go to oakgov.com/health or call Nurse on Call at 1-800-848-5533 to learn more.
Michigan, the coronavirus pandemic has put us all to the test. And now it's time to put COVID-19 to the test. As we move forward, testing will be critical. We encourage anyone who has reason to get tested to do so, those with symptoms and those without. If you are leaving home and going back to work, get tested. If you think you may have COVID-19 or you've been exposed recently through family, friends, or coworkers, get tested. Our test locator tool can help you find the right testing site that fits your needs. Even if you're looking for easy access with no cost, no prescription, and no appointment necessary, we've got you covered. Help Michigan move forward, not backward. To find a testing site or learn more, visit michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Thank you for joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. A very sad statistic. 7 out of 10 people are experiencing mental distress as a result of the COVID crisis. Now, on top of that, we are going into the holidays, which is going to mean additional stress. And to talk more about this important issue here on the Oakland County Megacast, let's go ahead and bring in Jill Blackson. She's the Deputy Director for the Community Care Center, a nonprofit mental health agency. Jill, thank you for being with us on the Oakland County Megacast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Can we talk a little bit, before we start talking about the holidays, we have to talk about where we are right now as a community. And so many people are impacted in one way or another because of the COVID-19 and this crisis. When should someone understand it's just general stress and when they should seek help?
Yeah, and I think that even if you never experienced this kind of stress and anxiety before, if you had the quote normal kind of holiday stress, this is a game changer. This is different for everybody. And I think one understanding that we literally are all in this together, the entire world is can be helpful. But if your anxiety, if your stress is getting to the point where you're really having a hard time even functioning, then you need to reach out because help is out there virtually. So people do need to kind of check in with themselves and their family members and say, this is taking a big toll.
But with that, Jill, when you say it's impacting your life, is it small things that one person is noticing, or is this really something where you're not operating normally at all?
Yeah, I think really it's if you notice that, okay, it's maybe more than just, I'm feeling really down about this and this is wearing on me, but it's to the point that I'm struggling even getting out of bed. Or if family members are noticing that someone in their family or their friendship group even is really withdrawing, it's more than kind of like, we're all kind of, struggling with this and it stinks and it's rough. It's that, wow, you're really having a hard time. You are not functioning. You're struggling getting yourself to work. You're struggling getting yourself to maybe help your kids with their Zoom classes and things like that. If it's getting to that point, and I would say, even if it's not, even if you just need to kind of process this with somebody and talk it through, reach out and get the help before it gets even worse for yourself.
That's such an important thing that you just mentioned right there, is before it gets worse, because I will say, I think prior to the pandemic, mental health was a subject that we didn't really want to touch on, or there was a stigma attached to it. But I do think hopefully one of the good things to come out of this crisis is that it's okay for us to talk about mental health now.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We look at our physical health and our mental health so differently, and we really shouldn't. You would probably not have a whole lot of shame of telling somebody that you're diabetic or that you have some heart conditions that you're working on and getting treated for. But for some reason, when it comes to our mental health, we look at it differently, and we even put that stigma on ourselves. And we think that we should just be able to kind of tough it out and be able to handle it. And that is just not the case. Sometimes we need some help, and there's no shame in that. And you don't have to suffer. And I think that's really what I like people to know and to hear, is that you don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer through this. You can get some help to get some coping skills to be able to manage this tough time.
So when you say get some help, can we talk about what kind of help is out there and available?
Yeah, well, I know even for us, so anyone can call Community Care Services and we can get you in to see a therapist virtually. So you don't have to leave your home. You don't have to, go out if you're uncomfortable doing so. But there's lots of agencies that now are doing that same thing. That during this time, we didn't stop our services. We knew people still needed to see their therapist, or if they need some help with housing and food and things like that, we have our case managers that can assist with that. If you're looking at possibly taking some medication, we have psychiatrists available that can also, do an assessment and prescribe that if that's something that's needed as well. So you can do this virtually, and I think that's new for a lot of people, but they can do that. And, I think at first we're all kind of a little hesitant to do the Zoom virtual thing, but we're all a little bit more used to it now in some way. And with smartphones, you can do it right through your phone as well.
So we talk so much about the hospitals being overloaded and the healthcare workers being stressed out because of the COVID caseload. Is that the same scene that's kind of playing out in your world as well?
Absolutely. I have so much respect for all these, essential workers that are out there. But, our staff are essential workers, and our staff, all day long, 5 days a week, are helping and doing everything they can to help other people's mental health. And we make sure that they are taking care of their own as well, because if we know the toll it takes, even listening to the news and hearing all these stories, imagine as someone who's in the mental health field, hearing all these, taking on everyone else's, feelings as well. And they have to make sure they're taking care of themselves. So yeah, it's taking a toll on them as well.
But Jill, why do you think as a community, we're not talking about that more? We're not talking about the people on your side of this pandemic. We hear about the people in the hospitals, and we're hearing about the workers in the nursing homes, but no one's talking about the workers in your field.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that, again, I think some of it is that we just don't talk about mental health in general. It's kind of one of those things that people might to their close friends say, yeah, I'm seeing somebody. So I think in general, it's just a field that, doesn't get probably the recognition, and I might be a bit biased, but doesn't get the recognition that it deserves. Our staff are dealing with people who are really struggling, and we're struggling before this with some severe mental health issues, and now that's just been, gotten bigger for them during this time. And children as well. We have children that we see also, and they're at home, and they need to see their therapist and get their help too. So I think it's just one of those things that in general we don't talk about our mental health. So I'm glad that we have venues like this to say, hey, if we've learned, like you said, anything, we need to take care of our mental health as much as our physical health. So hopefully that message will come out.
So you had just touched on about kids. What signs should a parent look for with their kids during this pandemic?
Yeah, I think similar what you would look for in adults. Are they withdrawing more than normal? Are you seeing changes in their sleep patterns and their eating patterns? Are they more irritable than normal? Things like that. But, people sometimes are afraid to come out and ask their child, how are you really feeling? Are you even, are you thinking about hurting yourself? If a parent's that worried, they should ask that question. They shouldn't shy away from doing that because, again, there is help out there for these kids. And I think just kind of sitting down and checking in with your child. How are you doing? Are you staying in touch with your friends? Because, they've lost a lot of those social, outlets that are important. So I think just kind of if you see a change in your child, your child, ask them. Don't be afraid to ask.
And I'm thinking about teenagers in general where they go, yeah, no, So you're right, yeah. But are you seeing an increase of kids and teenagers that need help right now because of this?
Yeah, I think overall everyone's anxiety has gone up, but when you have a child who's really their whole world is upside down, or maybe for them their safe place was actually at school because there's stuff going on at home, we have a lot of concerns about what's happening at home with these kids, with possibly the people that are causing some of their issues. So to be able to have that touch base virtually with their therapist is so important. But yeah, we have seen, if you have a kid that already was struggling maybe with some anxiety about going to school, think about how hard it's going to be for them to go back. If they were already struggling with their friends and social outlets and things like that, and that's completely gone, it's going to take a toll on anybody, for sure.
Yeah, and there is such a big concern about the long-term impact this is going to have on our kids and their recovery time as well. And so these conversations are so important to have. But are there avenues available to people who maybe can't afford a therapist, or they're, I don't know how it really works with a lot of insurance agencies as well. But again, there's that stigma attached to mental health.
Yes. And, most of all of your insurances now have some sort of benefit for therapy or for behavioral health services. And if you can't afford it, most places have, and we do too, a sliding scale fee so that we can make it affordable. We have a lot of clients who are on Medicaid. All they have to do is call, and that is a benefit that is covered for them as well. So it is out there. I always tell people, if you're not sure you have that insurance card, call that number on the back of your card. That customer service number, they will direct you. But most people do, in fact, all should have some sort of behavioral health benefit. Just call and find out where you can go and definitely access it. And people can call us and we'll help them with that as well.
Jill Blackson with us here on the Oakland County Megacast. She's the Deputy Director for Community Care Services. Jill, can you tell us a little bit more about your organization? How do you operate? I know that you're a nonprofit, but what's your world like?
Yeah. So we're a community mental health clinic. So as I mentioned, we primarily service the Medicaid population, but we do take private insurances as well. We are in Wayne County, we're in Lincoln Park, and we have sites in Taylor as well, although we are virtual. So, our clients are those that have been, screened and identified as having a mental health struggle. and we see them for therapy, for group therapy, for case management services, like I mentioned, if they need help with housing and food assistance or helping with various benefits, and then also for psychiatric support. And a lot of our work is in the community. So while we have pulled back on that, we still do have case managers going to people's homes, obviously with the appropriate safety precautions, and seeing what they need and helping them get what they need, even before all this, but definitely, now as well.
So your industry was overwhelmed prior to the pandemic, and now even more so with that. But I do hope that with this conversation, more people are looking to go into your industry. Yeah. How is it with staffing for you?
Okay, so this is a big issue for us. It's not a glamorous job, and you will not become rich. You really do have to have a calling to help people. And those are the people that we want, and those are the people that generally go into our field. But it is a low-paying field. And we do, look for added support so that we can increase what we can pay our staff. But right now we are short-staffed. And I think a lot of agencies like us are as well, to try and find people who want to do this work and have a calling, and then be able to pay them something that is, equivalent to their schooling and their worth is a struggle for us. So we do advocate to do what we can to get additional funding so that we can hire the staff that we need to do this really important work.
So what are the educational qualifications that you look for, and what is the starting pay? $25,000 maybe?
Well, it does depend, and we do have a set salary scale that we follow, but it does depend. So you can have someone that comes in at a bachelor level and with very little experience that could, maybe start out around 28. I can't say for sure because we have a formula that we have to follow that depending on your experience and your education. But we have staff that have, let's say, a bachelor's in social work. We have staff that have a master's in social work. We have case managers that also have bachelor's and masters. It just depends on what their preference is in terms of what they want to do with that degree. We also have staff who are psychologists. So you have your bachelor's and, your psychologist, and we have staff that have a degree in a human service field that can work in certain positions within our agency also. And then, of course, your doctors.
Right. And you look at this and you're like, but when you have a need due to a situation such as this, a spike in cases because of a pandemic, it's not so easy to just fill in that staffing need like someone at a retail store or a bar or restaurant may be able to do.
Right. And, we have to have, because of the work we do, you have to have a certain level of training, and everybody wants that. And so we do have to look for people who have the experience and the training in working in this field. And I'm not real sure if it's, something that people always look at as something that can be as rewarding as it is, because it can be very rewarding. And so I think that's part of the advocacy work that we do, is say that, yeah, it's tough work, but there's lots of tough work out there. But if you want to make a difference, and you're not someone who maybe wants to do that on the medical side, you can do it on the behavioral health and the mental health side. So me, I probably couldn't work with blood, but I like talking to people and I want to help people. So if you have a passion for wanting to help somebody, this may be a field for you to explore.
That is a great thing. With that, quickly, because I had a girlfriend who went into this, and then once she graduated, she lasted 6 months. It was too emotionally draining for her. So it takes the right person as well.
Yes.
What is the status of your internship policy at the time during a pandemic?
Yeah, well, we are open to taking interns, and we have contacted the universities that we've worked for and said we will do it virtually. We have to have staff on site who can mentor and be the liaison and the support to those interns, and we do have some staff that will do that. But I know it has been a struggle for the universities to place interns because that hands-on experience is so important. But we're doing what we can to make it work.
Yeah, and you want to foster that environment to try to get more people into this industry. Just about another minute with you before we let you go, Joe. Anything we didn't touch on or mention that you think is important to get out to the listeners and the viewers?
Well, I think we covered it. I just really want to emphasize that, one, don't worry about the stigma. taking care of yourself is always important. And if you don't have to suffer. I think people are suffering out there, and that makes me sad because they don't have to. It doesn't have to be years and years of therapy. You can reach out, get some help, and get some relief.
With that, what areas do you service?
We are in Wayne County.
And do you want to give out the information on how people they can connect with you if they need to?
Yes, they can call us at 313-389-7500, or they can look us up on our website at comcareserve.org as well.
Well, Jill, thank you so much for being with us here on the Oakland County Megacast. We so appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Jill Blackson with us. She's the Deputy Director for Community Care Services. Now is such an important time. It's okay if you are suffering, reach out, make a phone call, ask for help. Please, please do not be too proud to do so, because so many people are struggling right now, even more so than ever before. That's going to pretty much wrap it up for the Thursday edition of the Oakland County Megacast. For Tyler and myself, as well as Larry, handling all the Zoom interviews, as well as Jake, who helps book all of our guests, we want to say thank you and have a safe and healthy Thursday.